5.
I'm not going to count down.
Oh, okay.
It's already started.
I was counted, man. I was counting.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, everybody. This is Keith and Logan, and we're here to continue our study of the book of Isaiah for our Wednesday night class. We hope everyone's had a good week since we last spoke to you. Hope you've been keeping up a little bit. And if you have, great. And if you've been watching Logan's Sunday morning sermons, great also. I was just thinking, Logan, man, I know that this probably will end. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but we'll probably this staying home thing will end, relatively soon. I don't know when, and I don't want to make any guesses as to when. I guess us being an older population might consider extending it past whatever the recommended thing is, but
possibly.
I don't want to speak to that, but my main point is that I would love to keep doing this after if we can find the time.
That would be cool.
I think it's been super interesting. So
yeah,
might be something that we can.
I think that I've heard some stuff like that as well. I've heard some places that are going to start opening up as of like
this Friday. I think a lot of the restaurants around town are. So
yeah, this week or next week.
And then if me with a newborn, we're probably gonna hold it out just a little bit, not go out to eat and everything. Just be super safe. I don't want the kid to catch something and then have to go to the hospital. So, Anyway, so we're going to continue with Isaiah chapter 1, as we have been doing for 3 weeks now. This is the third week, and we're going to try and get through Isaiah 21 through 31 today. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Brother Logan,
if we can.
Okay. When's last we left off?
Do you want to start with the question we had in chapter 1?
Yeah, sure. So we talked about Isaiah chapter 1. I got my notes all here and everything, and I kind of took them down on a better format. We had gotten all the way to verse 20, but there was a specific part that I think had some hang up there.
Yeah. I felt like we've been doing pretty good, but yeah, there was one spot there that
I'll start in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 7 and just read through. Your country lies desolate. Your cities are burned. Hold on real quick. Let's try our new, I got my Bible here, but let's try our new,
our system
here. So I've got it pulled up. Sorry about all the ads and everything. I just went to Bible Gateway. There's just a New King James Bible. So the screen's kind of busy, but here's the verse. And
hopefully this comes up when we convert
record. And I think it should. Yeah, I really think it should.
I think it should.
So your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Strangers devour your land in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by strangers. So this is the part we got to here that had the question. So the daughter of Zion.
All of that is pretty straightforward.
Sure.
God is talking about the future as if it is the present, because God can do that, Right. When he makes a prediction, it's as good as done. And then he's talking about strangers, which I think is important because they are going to be strangers. Right. And they're going to be the ones that do it. So they're not going to be friends. They're going to be strangers. Okay, go ahead.
And then we got verse 8 here, which is I think where our question lies, is so the daughter of Zion is left as a booth in a vineyard, as a hut in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city. So some of the wording on that confused me, and my understanding that you did a little bit of extra research and kind of figured out a little bit about this.
Actually, I didn't do it on purpose. I was in a little bit later in Isaiah. I don't know what I was doing there. So in chapter 6, it says that in the year that King Uzziah died, and so that's going to be the first king here: Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. And so I think and Uzziah is the same as Azariah, remember? So I think I went back to Second Kings to see what was going on, and to get a little bit of the background a little bit. And I found this. Let me see. In 2 Kings chapter 17, this is after the north has gone into captivity, there in verse 23. So Israel was carried away from their own land to Assyria, as it is to this day. And then Assyria starts to resettle Samaria, okay? And this is where we start to get the population of Samaritans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Samaritans.
Yeah.
Samaritans. And what ends up happening is they get into the territory and it's all pagan, right? All worshiping of false idols. So God sends lions into the territory, and they run savage. And the first thing that they say is, well, it's got to be because we're not worshiping the God of this land. Okay, they're thinking very territorial, and so locational theology, right? And so they teach the people how to worship the true God. And so they start doing this worshiping of God and worshiping of idols at the same time. And I guess that God says, all right, I'll take away the lions. But what's interesting is it makes this list here in verse 29. However, every nation continued to make gods of its own and put them in the shrines on the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in the cities where they dwelt. Verse 30. The men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth. And that means tents of daughters. And so I did a little bit of research into this. What is the tents of daughters? Apparently, the Babylonians would erect these tents, and either one, that's where the prostitutes of this particular goddess worked, or two, that's just the shrine of where they would put the idols of the goddess. The goddess, I think, is going to be the wife of Marduk, and he is an extremely important figure in the Babylonian pantheon, or the Mesopotamian pantheon. So, anyways, the daughters of the tents of the daughters, okay, I think is interesting, very interesting to put it that way, because so what they would do is they would put up these tents or these booths, and in these tents or booths, that's where the prostitution took place for these foreign gods. So go back to that verse, and here's a couple theories that I had. Okay, my first theory is there in verse 8.
Mm-hmm.
When he says daughters of Zion, is he contrasting that with the daughters of this goddess, Babylonian goddess, or this Mesopotamian goddess? You should be the daughters of Zion, but you're making yourself, but he's contrasting that with the daughters of paganism. My second theory, which goes with that, is when he talks about these huts or these booths or these tents, is this what he's talking about? So the daughters of Zion, they should be daughters of Zion, but contrasting with these daughters of these pagan goddesses, they're making themselves as these booths or these tents or these huts in locations where God is currently blessing them. Okay, so your vineyard, your cucumbers, your gardens, who causes you to have fruit? Who causes you to have food and to produce?
Yeah.
Well, God does. Okay, so you're going to the areas where God is blessing you, and you're erecting these tents that function as either pagan shrines or huts for prostitution. Maybe. I don't know. Those are my theories.
Yeah. So I dig the theory, and I guess I don't want to try and expound on it too much as an unlearned man in this particular subject, but it makes a lot of sense. That would fit the comparison and what he's talking about there, because otherwise it just kind of seems out of place or like esoteric, right? Like you'd have to know something, like you're kind of missing like an inside joke or something.
Yeah, I think the first thing that you asked was, what is the cultural significance of this? And I think that's exactly the right question. That might be it. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah.
Are cucumbers something? This is a complete aside, but are cucumbers something that's grown in the Mediterranean a lot?
Question at a time, dude.
I know. I've never, I don't think I ever hear cucumbers mentioned in the Bible again.
Give me another week.
Look up cucumbers.
I will say this: there are some words I think in Hebrew that are translated, and they could stand for multiple things.
I guess zucchini, like we get that from the Mediterranean region, right? So that's a type of cucumber.
For example,
they're all just a type of squash.
For example, fish could potentially, I think, reference even sea mammals.
Oh yeah.
And
because they wouldn't have called them
sea
mammal. I mean, if it was in the water, it was a fish, right?
And birds may include
bats,
like bats and things like that.
Sure.
Which I think we're going to get a reference to bats later in the book. But anyways,
cool.
Okay.
So we are on, let's see, verse 21, right?
Okay.
The degenerate city is the heading I have here.
How long did we spend in verse 18?
We spent the last half of the first episode and then pretty much all of last episode.
Okay.
18 and on. Yeah, we spent very little time there.
Okay, just a few things that I think are really important. This is an invitation to reason with God, and in order to seek a logical conclusion, okay? So God is welcoming the conversation. Okay, who does that? Do kings do that? Do dictators do that? Do authoritarians do that?
Not typically.
Marilyn Manson, the musician.
Yeah, okay.
He gets on stage, and I just saw a clip of this, and he's calling Christianity like a fascist regime, okay? Does the leader of fascism say, come and talk to me? I want to reason with you. I want to talk logic with you. In other words, I'm not going to force you to agree with me without you understanding. I want you to understand, okay? That's not fascism, okay? I'm watching this Marilyn Manson, and I'm just thinking, you don't understand. I at least I don't think, and fascism was a much later development, I think, historically. But the point I'm trying to make, I don't know enough about that to comment on it. The point I'm trying to make is, what fascist ruler says, anyone who has a question, anyone who has a complaint, anyone who has an argument, come and talk to me. Let's talk about it.
It's really interesting because I was just reading the definition of fascism yesterday. No, I'm serious. I was reading a little bit about Benito Mussolini, right? He was the fascist leader and he's kind of the one that, for being as big a loser as he was, he kind of pioneered the idea of fascism, right? But by definition, it involves the suppression of opposition, right? By definition, it involves suppressing opposite ideas, disallowing open conversation, right?
Yeah.
And by definition, that is an admitted fascist principle.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't see that. You don't see any sort of open dialogue being open with anybody that would consider themselves a fascist, right?
So this verse is like the complete opposite of fascism.
Right. Sure.
It wants an open dialogue. It wants counter views. It wants you to present your case. God does this multiple times, and there are passages of scripture where a prophet will do that, like Jeremiah. And I don't know exactly where it's at. And he legitimately says, God, he doesn't outright say this, but I'll put it in my own words.
Sure.
Just say, this is nuts. This is insane. You think about Habakkuk, who's talking to God about him using these Mesopotamian nations for judgment, and he's like, this is messed up. You can't do this, God. You can't use wicked nations to judge your people. How can you do that? And of course, he's a lot more humble and respectful than that, because he says, correct me. I'm listening, correct me. But still, it's like, what dictator, what power mongering fascist leader is going to let someone talk to you that way?
Oh, for sure.
And then I also want to contrast this, because I think this is a theme in the book of Isaiah and later chapters. Contrast this with the gods of mythology and paganism. Okay, what God is verbally saying, "Come and talk to me. Let us reason together"? You don't see it.
Yeah, about the only experience I have is the Greek mythology, and those guys are jerks, man.
Yeah, but even in Greek mythology, we're talking about stories. We're not talking about historical events. Moses going on the mountain was an historical event. The difference between that and I don't know, give me a Greek myth where someone talks to a god. Those are stories with things that cannot be verified, and so that's a fair point, but I think that's how I would respond. We're talking about historical events, with conversations that have implications of changes in the timeline. For example, Hezekiah going before God, and God saying, Assyria has destroyed all of these other nations around you, but they're not going to do that to you. And then 185,000 Assyrians fall that night. And you can read the record of the Assyrian conquest.
Yeah.
And it talks about all of them except for that. Because the ancients didn't want to talk about their defeats.
Sure.
And they were probably really confused by it,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're doing really good, and now all of a sudden
we're not.
185,000 people are wiped out. Okay, it's time to go home.
Doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Okay. And then to close this, so we have a potential here, which I think is really profound, of a complete forgiveness. Okay, I want to talk about the complete aspect of this forgiveness. This is I think a good definition of grace, and that anything that is on your record is going to be removed from your record.
Right.
And God is giving the potential of that of your record being absolutely completely cleared.
Yeah, though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool.
That's right. It's a complete reversal of the mistakes that you've made. Now, verse 19, the condition. There is a condition. Okay, a lot of people want to say that grace doesn't ever have conditions. No one has conditions. It doesn't have a merit, but it does have conditions. There's a huge difference. The condition, if, right? And I'm not saying it has a condition because that's my theology. It has to have a condition. No, the if implies a condition. If you are, number one, willing, and number two, obedient. These are two requirements. The willingness is having a heart to do good, and obedience
is doing
the specifics of what is good, right? So when I start talking about the specifics of what is good, the implication there is it's more than just motivation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's compound also. It can't be either or, right? So you can't it's not just doing the good things, right? There's a willingness to do the good things also. You can't begrudgingly or half-heartedly do the good things and call it good.
Bingo.
There's a compound.
And boy, I think people miss this hardcore. We could spend like 30 minutes on this.
I think we did a while back.
Have we? Well,
I think we talked a little bit about having your heart in it and stuff last time, but that was over. But anyway, go ahead.
Sure, but now he's giving the definition of it. So
yeah,
this
sure.
that was, I think, us speaking on it, getting ahead of ourselves. But here's God saying, okay, here's the specifics of it. Your heart's got to be in it, and you've got to get the specifics of what I want you to do. And so I talk to people who are like, it doesn't matter how you worship as long as you're worshiping with all your heart. Wrong. And then there's some people that say, as long as you worship in the right way, your heart doesn't have to be in it. Wrong.
Yeah.
It's twofold, and both are equally significant. And if you do that, there's a promise of a blessing. We're talking about provision. We're talking about preservation. And we're talking about protection, right? Shall not be devoured by the sword.
And I don't think this is just an Old Testament concept either, right?
No, it's not.
Right. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments.
Yes. Yep.
I think
love is the willingness, and keeping the commandments is the obedience.
Right. And I talked about this in my class with the kids, and I don't know if any of them will remember this, but the word repentance, right? Mm-hmm. And this might be getting off track. I think it's pertinent. The word repentance in the Greek there is, and you know this probably better than me, is metanoeo, right? Metanoeo, mm-hmm. Or meta. Well, anyway, I don't know how to parse it correctly, but
you're not supposed to do this, but it's interesting. Meta is with, and nous is the mind. So with the mind. Yeah. But we don't do that when we translate words. But I think it's interesting whether it's right.
So I was under the impression that it was metanoeo as in a change of mind, right? A change of what you know.
Yeah.
Meta, like metamorphosis, right? The change in the shape.
Yeah, prepositions are tricky.
Okay.
That's why you can't do a direct.
Right, I'm with you. So the focus there, though, I think was that it was a full change of mind, right? Repentance, and we think so much of it as like a thing that we do, but it requires a change in your will, and it requires a change in your action, right? So going forward, and I think this is the same idea, right? It's not just about changing what you do, or it's not just about changing what you want to do. It's about changing both of them.
Yes. So yeah, bingo.
And Paul discusses that. Go ahead.
Yeah, he does. He does talk about that.
I do what I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do what I do want to do.
Yeah. He's talking about the struggle.
That's a fun verse to read in English, by the way. I bet it wasn't that hard in Greek, but in English, it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple verses like that in Romans, like in chapter 1.
A lot of to-dos.
Like, man, this is hard to translate, but it makes sense.
It's tongue twisters. You couldn't say them 5 times fast.
Yeah.
If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land, but if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword.
Yeah. So right. So refusing is saying no to the specifics, but also saying no to the heart, having the heart of or for good. So the heart of good or the heart for good. That's the refusal. I'm refusing it. Rebelling is to do something else, right? So refusing is saying, I'm not going to do the good that you want me to do, God. Rebelling is saying, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something alternative to your definition.
Yeah, you got opposites there, right?
Right. And the consequence, like I said, is defeat, and there's no preservation of the nations. And when he says, "For the mouth of the Lord is spoken," there in verse 20, he's saying it cannot be any other way. Isn't that what he's saying?
Yeah.
It's decided, okay? If I said it, then it's going to be that way. If I said it, it's going to be true. That's why he was using that terminology earlier in the chapter when he was talking about how
it'll be desolate.
Yeah. It's like it hadn't happened yet, but it will. Okay. If he said it, it's going to happen. Okay, I'm ready to move on if you are.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to ask, do we have any well, that'd probably be beating a dead horse. Let's just move on. Verse 21. I was going to ask if we had any New Testament examples that they could think of that fit this idea of refuse and rebel or willing and obedient, right? Maybe a New Testament example of someone that was willing but not obedient, or someone that was obedient but not willing, right?
Yes.
And the best example I think I could probably come up with would be Pharisees and then Jews after the new covenant was ushered in.
Yeah. So let's stay in Romans then, if we do that. In Romans chapter 10.
Yeah. That's actually what I was thinking about.
Yeah. He says the Jews, they have a zeal without knowledge.
Yeah.
The zeal is the willingness, and the knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. So they want to do what's right, they just don't do what's right. And I think the Pharisees are a direct opposite of that, who knew the letter of the law to the fullest extent of it all, but they were doing it all for the wrong reason, right?
Which caused them to pervert the actual specifics of.
Yeah, sure.
But we could talk about that a long time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was beating a dead horse, but I just think it would be good to draw
I don't think it's beating a dead horse.
Some real life comparisons.
Yeah. I think that the Pharisees are coming out of a lot of stuff historically. They're coming out of the Jews having an ancestry that were literally worshipped pagan gods. I mean, that's messed up. And they're looking back and they're saying, we would never do that.
Yeah.
So, and I think Zechariah speaks to this a little bit. When they come back into the land, there's not going to be any more paganism. Paganism got pretty much taken care of after this. So God sent them into captivity because of idolatry. The correction was in the captivity. They learned their lesson pretty much. I think it's safe to say. But when they came back, I feel like they were so adamant about not falling back into something like that.
Yeah, they were reactionary.
They added to what God said in order to say, okay, we are definitely not going down that road again, right? because of how intense and burdensome. They probably weren't thinking that, but anyways, so they had good intentions. I think we need to make a note of that though, because legalists have good intentions, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
They have good intentions. They legitimately want to do the right thing. They have the willingness. Do I want to say it's out of fear? I don't know if it's fear or just they want to be absolutely sure. And so if there's anything that's even close to being wrong, they're gonna work in like the absolutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you know who speaks in absolutes?
The Sith.
The Sith speaks in absolutes.
If Logan Murray is watching.
Yeah, he might be the one to get that.
Yeah.
Verse 21. Let's start there, because this is going to open up a new section of it, kind of. And maybe we've been talking for a while, but maybe we can cut through this a little bit. I'm going to start reading now, if you don't mind. How the faithful city has become a harlot. Hey, that, by the way, is going to call back to what we were just talking about, right? The prostitutes and the tents. Mm-hmm. It was full of justice, righteousness lodged in it. But now murderers. Yeah. Your silver has become dross, your wine mixed with water. Your princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loves bribes and follows after rewards. They do not defend the fatherless, nor does the cause of the widow come before them.
A few interesting things here. Go ahead and keep it on the passage,
okay, yeah, sure.
If you don't mind. That way we can...
because that's going to that end part there, not to move too far forward, but that end part there is going to be a direct callback to what? Defend the fatherless, plead for the widow, right?
Yeah.
So exactly. The definition of justice.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
How the faithful city has become a harlot.
Yeah. Okay, so this theme of prostitution, this was definitely hit on in Hosea. Okay, so Hosea was speaking to the northern kingdom. And so now he's going to do some comparing and contrasting what it once was and what it now is. And speaking about Judah, you can do that. If you're going to speak about Israel, you can't do that because Israel was never righteous.
Right, yeah.
Or full of justice. We need to emphasize this word murderer. I don't think this is I do not think this is figurative. I think this is literal. I think people be murdering, and that's a big deal, because it's like that's a big deal to God. Silver has become dross. Okay, the value is leaving. Wine mixed with water. What do you think he's talking about there?
Dilution, right?
Yeah. I think he's
less potent or mixed.
Figuratively, I think that might be true. If we're talking literal, why would you mix water with wine? Let's say you sell wine. Why would you mix?
It's the same reason that some gas station owners mix gas with water, right? You sell less of the actual expensive product.
Right. Or liquor, right?
Or liquor. It cheapens it, right?
It cheapens
you're cheapening it. Liquor and all of those things, by the way, are really hard to mix with water because they're all immiscible, so they separate into layers and stuff. So you have to keep them mixed, but that's completely unimportant. What he's drawing, I was just thinking, it actually might end up being harder to mix some of those things with alcohol and water. Just don't mix together. So what he's drawing,
but this is grape juice. You can do that. You can add water to it, and it'll be okay. And I won't get into it. The point I'm trying to make is, you dilute it and you get rid of its flavor, but you can actually make it last a lot longer.
Yeah, make it go longer.
Right. So princes are rulers. They're corrupt. And then they've got like people that are stealing and thieves in these higher positions, and that will willingly take money to let something swing your way.
So the thing here to me is drawing a comparison between two things, and one is a thing that is meeting its purpose, and another is a thing that is not. Right. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think all of this stuff, and the question that's commonly asked is, what does this have to do with us? What is the Old Testament? How does that, do we listen to the Old Testament, right? And we always say the principles of the Old Testament are applicable to our lives, right? And I think that there's a New Testament principle being illustrated here, and I'm going to talk about which one in just one second. Your silver has become dross. I don't understand the concept of dross, but just the word, I don't know what that means. I'm not familiar with that vernacular. I'd like to, let me see what the ESV says, just so that maybe I can get It says dross. Great. So the word dross, though, in and of itself has like a pejorative connotation, right? Maybe because it's contrasted with silver. Do you know what that word means?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to ask me.
Go ahead. What's it mean?
No, I'm just joking. So there's this buildup that happens to metal. They're like, I'm also looking it up.
Tarnishing.
Tarnishing. Like a tarnish. Yeah. So maybe like akin to like rust, but I don't think quite. Rust is not quite the right idea.
Thing. Right.
But it can also be used in the sense that of just referring to, the dictionary says like rubbish and things like that.
Sure.
But I think kind of the buildup of kind of impurities that get into that start the scum. One definition.
Sure.
It starts,
and it's going to kill the sheen of it, right? So when we think about these things, right, what are the purpose of all of these things? You talked about the purpose of a prince, right? They're a ruler.
Yeah.
Wine, the purpose of wine, right? It's going to have flavor. It's going to sustain you, right? There's nutrients and whatnot. Silver, it's shiny. That's pretty much its only purpose, right? It's a metal. It's a shiny metal that looks pretty, okay? When the shiny metal no longer looks pretty, it's useless. When the wine is mixed with water, it no longer has the qualities of wine. When your princes are rebellious, they're no longer good rulers, okay? To me, at least, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but to me, it's contrasting the thing that had purpose with the thing that no longer is fitting that purpose, okay?
Exactly.
And if we're going to make a New Testament comparison, what are we going to say, right? You're the salt of the earth. If the salt is no longer salty, then what is it worth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it doesn't function like it's supposed to function.
The purpose that it was given to function in, right? So
the design,
I just thought that's
going against the design.
I don't know if that's important to mention, but I think I think there's some import there because
it is. I mean, the Christian, the role of a Christian. Okay, so when an individual becomes a Christian, they assume a function in the world.
Sure.
And so that function is, Jesus says, is salt. So it And you can look at that in a couple different ways. When he says salt, we have to go, well, okay, what does salt do? It preserves. Okay. In other words, we're not trying to
for
tear
sure.
things down. We're trying to build things up. It gives
It flavors.
flavor. Yeah. It's a blessing on the food. It doesn't.
By the way,
harm
salt is in almost every dish that you make. After I learned a little bit about cooking, right? You don't just put it in salty things. You put it in sweet things, and it enhances the flavor of just about everything. All
just
around.
About everything. Yeah.
So our goal is not just
really
to enhance. Our goal is not just to enhance and bless others that are salty. Our goal is to bless. We're a blessing to the world, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not acting in that way, then we're not functioning in our purpose. The reason I bring that up is because I think these ideas, right?
Huge.
The willingness and the obedience, right?
That's right.
Becoming dross, wine mixing with water. These are ideas that show, and here's a word for you, the immutability of God's expectation on his people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lack of change over
doesn't
time,
change.
right? God has not changed about his expectations.
Mm-mm.
He hasn't changed from wanting his people to be willing and obedient, from wanting his people to be the salt of the earth, to be the silver and the wine and the princes, to be these things that fit the function that he's asked them to fit. This has not changed from the days of Genesis to the days of Isaiah to the days of Jesus to the days of us.
Right.
And I think if anything, if you're going to take anything from Isaiah, take that. I mean, there's a lot to take, right? Surely there's a lot to take. But if you're gonna miss anything, don't miss that point.
Yeah, the book of Micah is a prophet that prophesies at the same time that Isaiah does. Sure. If you look at Micah chapter 1, you don't have to go there. It says that he's prophesying in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah. Same timeline here.
Yeah.
He says, in chapter 6, verse 8, he says, he has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Justice, mercy, humility. We're going to talk about all three of those. We're already talking about justice. We're talking about injustice. And when we talk about
anytime people think that expectation has changed, I think the reason that they see that in the Old Testament as being different is because we're looking at a group of people that has historically not done this super well.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to look at that and they're going to say, wow, God's people really acted different back then compared to what he wants them to act now. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the point. I mean, that's what the book of Isaiah is saying, right? Like that's the idea, is that they were not acting with the expectation that they had been placed under. So
that's right. And let's merge some ideas here. To walk justly, or to walk with justice, it's not just talking about kind of a court thing. In other words, I'm not a judge, so that doesn't apply to me.
Right, sure.
The word just in Greek was decay, which dikaiosune was righteousness. And so all of a sudden the entire book of Romans becomes extremely this is like, okay, so yeah, this is I seek justice in verse 17. So in other words, live a righteous life, right? Justice, righteousness. Dikaiosune is justification, but also righteousness. So you've got this idea of keep your record clean and do the right thing. And so,
which I think is interesting because of what the word
relevant to Christianity.
What the word justification means, right? We think about to justify something is to. You're going to say like, oh, you're just justifying your actions, right? And
yeah, I mean the negative.
Usually it's pejorative, right? But the idea of justification is to make right what isn't right.
Yeah.
So to justify, to make just what isn't just.
And Paul's point in Romans is you can't.
Yeah.
But God can make you just by forgiving you. Sorry, I stumbled on. And so
you were cutting out anyway, so.
Oh, sorry. But there's two ideas to that. Being justified and living justified. And they're both significant. And I think he's saying here in verse 16, be justified. Wash yourselves and make yourselves clean. Put away the evil doings from before your eyes. And then in verse 17, live justified. Yeah. Learn to do good, seek justice, cease to do evil. And then he goes back to be justified in verse 18, though your sins be like scarlet. So be justified, live justified, and the
dichotomy is going to be used throughout the entirety of Scripture, right? The duality of the two things there, action and inaction and that sort of thing.
It's it's an extremely Christian principle. It cannot be missed. And so when Paul goes into Romans and starts talking about these concepts, I think it's good that we have a really good understanding of God's expectation in Isaiah chapter 1 and the passage I read in Malachi's, was it 6? It's extremely important. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to verse 24?
24. Yep.
I feel like we covered that section pretty well.
We did. We're dealing in corruption. We're dealing in murder. We're dealing in injustice. Right. We're dealing in immorality. It didn't used to be that way.
And this came with those pagan idols, by the way. You mentioned that murder thing,
what is
being literal.
Yeah.
And that is important to note that God doesn't just hate these pagan idols because they're right. So you've got the whole "I am a jealous God," but he doesn't just hate these pagan idols because they're an opposite, an object of Israel or of Judah's affection. He hates them because they're fundamentally immoral.
Behavioral implications of these.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. If you support these, you're supporting, the death and destruction of lives for sacrifice and for all sorts of perverse.
When an expectation of
things that you don't talk about in polite company.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're about to talk about.
Yeah.
When the expectation of a particular deity is that you go into a tent and have sex with a woman that you don't know, or when you take your child and light him on fire, like that's ridiculous. I mean, that's infuriating.
How would it be possible for a God to support people participating in that sort of thing?
I want any skeptic of Scripture to imagine themselves standing and watching a father force their child to be tied up and set on fire and tell me that God is unjust for saying that he's going to bring destruction on the nations. It blows my mind. I'm getting a little bit emotional about it because that's ridiculous. Come on. You know exactly what God is talking about when he points his finger at that and says, there's no way I'm going to let that continue. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we know exactly where God is coming from. And I think anyone who doesn't is being, willingly blind to some obvious immorality, whether you're Christian or not.
All that to say that Judah, I keep saying Israel, Judah was participating in some pretty steep corruption.
They were.
Verse 24.
It's amazing because they just, I don't think it hasn't happened yet.
Whether they were whether the majority of them or not were participating in it, I think it was a widespread condoning of the.
Yeah, there are passages I think that imply that there are going to be righteous people.
For sure.
Yeah, because Isaiah is for one. But even he is going to admit his own fault and sin. So. Right.
Well, and even if you are a righteous and obedient, person living in this time, what is one of those principles of seeking justice? Right. You have to rebuke the oppressor. So sometimes this injustice doesn't come in. So there's a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." The idea here, I think, is that even if you weren't directly participating in or even mentally condoning these activities, if you weren't rebuking these ideas, then you were in the wrong, right? Yes. Rebuke the oppressor. That's kind of an idea there. Defend the fatherless, flee the widow.
It's what Saul did when he held the coats of the people that were stoning Stephen. I mean, it's a
so it's like, well, I didn't do it. Yeah, but right. I mean, you didn't stop it,
right?
Even if you're talking about a few just people, what did they do to stop this? And I don't want to speak because I don't know, but obviously there was an issue here.
Yeah, there is an occasion. Man, where is this? Ooh, I can't remember where it is. I'll try to find it. It's an example of a child sacrifice in the Old Testament, and the people of God, they go to take this city, and the king is on the wall or something, and he offers his child as a child sacrifice, and they see it, and it's like it bothers them so much that they just turn around and leave.
Yeah.
Like they don't even take the city. It's just like they are so bothered by it. I'm gonna have to find that. I want to read that again. I completely forgot about it, but yeah, it's really upsetting. And Uzziah does not do it, and Jotham does not do it, but Ahaz does do that. He does offer his child through the fire, as well as Manasseh.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we've got some real big perversions coming on, and think about it. God is saying all this before they actually do it. I mean, they've already done it. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to do it again, and it's like
get worse.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Verse 24. Therefore, the Lord says, the Lord of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, I will rid myself of my adversaries and take vengeance on my enemies. I will turn my hand against you and thoroughly purge away your dross. There's that word again. Yes. And take away all your alloy. I will restore your judges as at the first, and your counselors as at the beginning. Afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city.
Okay, very interesting, because he's not using complete destruction terminology. He's using reversal terminology. He's talking about, when you talk about dross on metal or silver or whatever, what is the actual
tarnish?
On the silver. Yeah. So when you're talking about that, what he's saying is, I'm just going to get rid of the dross. So the silver is still there. He's not getting rid of the silver.
Yeah, when you've got bad silver like that gets in that state. I don't think it's exactly rust. I don't think it's oxidation, right? But you're right.
No.
You can clean it. It's possible to clean it.
We can conceptualize that.
Right. It's not something that you have to throw out the silver, and it's not something that you have to throw out the gold, right?
Right.
You just have to polish it. Varnish it, I think is the term. Which is
what
always a confusing idea to me, by the way, because it rhymes with the opposite of that, which is tarnish. So.
Yeah. Which is what makes it a beautiful illustration, doesn't it? I mean, it's like he didn't use an illustration where something just needed to be completely destroyed. He used an illustration where something could actually be reversed.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this is a cool idea because he's going to, in the end, there is restoration terminology. What you remember he said, where justice, where does he say that? It was full of justice, righteousness, and then now it's full of murder, but I'm going to get it back to the mercy and the righteousness.
And afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city.
Okay, now, how does God do that in a world with free will? How does he do? He's speaking. This is interesting. This is very theologically interesting. He's saying there's going to be a restoration. I'm going to get rid of all these impurities. I'm going to take away of all the perversions. Now, how is he going to do that while not
compelling them?
What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean?
While not mandatorily compelling them is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
While not making it
so
it being voluntary. Right. So I think this idea goes back to a big question, right? And we talk about Pharaoh, and you use this example that kind of, this was one of my questions as a kid, and I like this example, right? So God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And some will say, well, how did God just made this guy do bad things, right?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, of course God didn't make Pharaoh continue to do these bad things to enslave the Israelites, because that would be against God's nature. He doesn't do bad, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So when you harden someone's heart, and this is I'm going to use your example here. I think actually your teacher told you this, right?
Yeah.
If I were to hand you a puppy and then tell you to kill that puppy.
Okay, right? Well, this is a variation of the.
Oh, okay. Maybe I made this up myself then. I'm going to copyright this. If I told you to kill that puppy,
yeah.
Okay. I can't make you kill the puppy, I can't make you not kill the puppy. But my commandment to you was to kill the puppy, and that commandment hardened your heart, and you were unable to do it. Okay? God's commandment was too much for Pharaoh to bear.
Right.
Or too much for his own pride to allow him to do.
Right.
Okay, well, in the same way, I think that...
And if you think about that, it makes sense, because as a Pharaoh, he is God.
Right. So let's yeah, right. So let's look at this. So an experience that Pharaoh had made it such, an experience that God gave Pharaoh made it such that he was unable to do the thing that God asked. In the exact opposite way, God is going to provide an experience to Israel that is going to make it such that it would be impossible for them not to be righteous, right? Is this what so we're saying the process of captivity, the torment that they're going to experience in all of this is not going to be God saying, you have to come back to me and you have no choice in the matter. They're going to look at this and they're going to say, there's no way we couldn't.
That's right.
How could we ever do anything?
It's fascinating. That? Okay. That
might have been a long way to get there.
No. It's not. It's a perfect way to get there. Now insert the Christ.
Into our lives?
No. I just mean into that explanation. Insert the Christ into your explanation. Now all of a sudden you've got a love on a cross.
Yeah,
that
for
is
sure.
So compelling. It's perfect. It's perfect terminology. It's like I'm gonna cause you to come to me. How are you gonna do that? I'm gonna send my son, and he's gonna die on the cross for your sins. It's like what Jesus says: if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw men unto myself. It is such it's so compelling.
I love the thought. I get goosebumps at the thought. I love the thought. I love the thought because it's a model for Christian behavior.
Yes.
We don't compel mandatorily. I'm trying to think of the word. The whole idea of faith is
okay.
It's not.
This is not a okay. Let's go back to this whole fascism conversation. This is not a fascist. This is not a dictator. Dictators don't do this. Dictators say you live this way or else. Yeah. No, this is a loving God that says, I'm going to cause you to do this, and the way I'm going to do it is because I'm going to so compel you that you're going to be like, I can't do it any other way.
Right. And
nothing else makes sense. Reason with me, right? This is the only logical conclusion for you.
And that sets a model. And what I was trying to get at was that sets a model for us as Christians, right?
It does.
So that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. We're not compelling. And I'm trying to think of which verse that is. I think it's in 2 Peter now that I think of it, but I might be wrong. Right. And it's basically saying, watch what you do among the Gentiles. Is it 1 Peter or Romans?
It's going to be 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 2.
2 verse 7. I'm just completely spitballing at this point.
Thinking it was a little later. But.
Watch your behavior among the Gentiles so that they can see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven, right? And I don't even think the word Gentiles was used in that. I think I'm just completely...
No, you're not. I don't think you're making it up. Having your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation.
Yeah, so God's model is there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the model is, I'm not going to make you do anything. I'm not going to take it by force. You're not going to worship me because I force your hand, okay? And neither is Christianity going to militarily enforce. Now, there have been some, I think, that have tried to do that. And it works very, very seldomly, right? Because the idea of anything being compulsory makes people hate it. If I told you, and this is the way the laws work pretty much, but if I told you, every day you have to eat a bag of goldfish crackers, you might like goldfish crackers, but after about 365 days of forced goldfish cracker eating, you'll probably come to despise them, if I had to guess. Right. Unless you're some sort of serious,
Let's go back to the willingness obedience model.
Right, for sure.
All of a sudden, the obedience model may or may not continue, but the willingness is definitely not there.
Yeah, for sure. And so the idea is that Christians, we're not going to militarily make your faith by force because that willingness is part of it, but we're going to show you our deeds so that someday you glorify your Father in heaven. And this is something that I think is missed dearly in a lot of people's lives, right? Because what does that imply that the best way to get people to Christ is? right? Well, they have to see it in our lives, first of all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't involve going to the grocery store and being a jerk to your cashier. And then I say this because as a man that's worked in retail,
yeah, I know.
Pleasant experience. It's not a pleasant experience at all. But the problem I have is that a lot of these people will have Bible verses on their shirts, right? And
Yeah.
And I think of this one woman in particular, and I'm not gonna say her name because she might decide to wisen up. But I think this one woman I had in the pool store that was would literally quote a Bible verse to her kids. Her kid was misbehaving in the store, and she said, "What does this Bible verse say?" And then the kid said, "I don't know." And she says, "Well, you need to know it." And then she would read it. But that woman was the rudest woman that has ever come into that store to me. Like, seriously, She was so rude. And you can ask my brother-in-law, my brother that worked there. She was so rude. And I think that's a crazy dichotomy, right? Between like, oh, I'm going to shout scripture at you and I'm going to wear T-shirts that say like the power of Christ, but then I'm not going to show it with my behavior. I'm not going to show it to the Gentiles who can see the good deeds and glory. That makes people hate us.
Yeah.
And I think that idea is missing. It's missing here in Judah, and it's going to be missing in a lot of people's lives. And so
I think that there was a guy that said I can't remember his name, and it was early, like I'm thinking like 3rd, 4th century, something like that. He said something like it may have been later than that. He said something like, if Christians actually lived like this is my summary, okay? If Christians actually live like Christians, there probably wouldn't be any atheists in the world.
Yeah, so Gandhi said, and citation needed here on whether or not he actually said this, but a lot of quotes are attribited to people that didn't actually say it.
I never tell a lie.
Right, yeah. So Gandhi said, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Did he say that?
Yeah. Gandhi said,
I knew someone said it.
Gandhi said, I like your Christ. I don't like your Christians. Your Christians are often very unlike your Christ. And that's, as a Christian, it's tough to hear because like, well, maybe I'm not, and that's a generalization, but I don't think that's necessarily what he's getting at. I think the point is that very often that's not the case. And so we have to move from that mindset of, it's not just enough to, and this, I think this goes back to the dichotomy we're talking about between willingness and obedience. It's not just enough to know the stuff and to recite the stuff. It's enough. You got to do this stuff, I can watch cooking videos all day long, but if I don't actually get in there and cook, I'm not a chef.
Right.
So anyway.
And you're not going to do it unless you want to do it. And you're not going to do it right unless you do it the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So anyway, there's very good.
And I think we are getting here to something, the heart. This is what Jesus, I think, in his teachings really capitalized on when he talks about concepts that are derived from Old Testament, which a lot of things.
Book of Isaiah is going to be a hallmark of quotations in the gospel. So in the gospels. So
there is a mind to the individual that is saying these things. God, there's a heart to the individual saying these things, and he is speaking to a mind of the reader and the heart of the reader. God is not asking people to be heartless, and he's not asking people to be mindless. He's asking, come reason with me. He wants them to be mindful, and he wants them to be heartful. He wants them to do things because of the love that he's showing. So yeah, I'm really glad we got to all of that, because it is so critical. It's so crucial.
Hey, it's gonna be 2:00 here in 4 minutes. You think we can knock out this 27 through 31?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, 27. Zion shall be redeemed with justice, and her penitents with righteousness. There are those two ideas again, by the way. The destruction of transgressors and of sinners shall be together, and those who forsake the Lord shall be consumed, for they shall be ashamed of the terebinth trees which you have desired. And you shall be embarrassed.
That's a pagan reference.
Yeah, I figured it was something foreign, right?
Yeah, so the trees, the trees and stuff they would make for shrines and things like that.
Right. And I like, anytime you see, and this is a real quick aside, anytime you see that mentioned in the Old Testament, right, he often belittles the idea of idols by taking them down to their base parts. Stones, right? The trees, right? They're just trees. They're just.
Let's talk about what they actually are, not about what you think they
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't even give them the credence of calling them idols and statues, right? They're trees.
Great point.
And you shall, and well, you
Which you
shall,
have chosen, which you have
yeah,
chosen.
which you have desired, and you
Yeah.
shall be embarrassed because of the gardens which you have chosen. For you shall be as a terebinth whose leaf fades, and as a garden that has no water. These things are temporary, right? They don't last forever.
That's right.
The strong shall be as.
He's taken them down to their base element, and then he has said that. I mean, what are they going to become? They're going to become nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
The strong shall be as tinder, and the work of it as a spark, and will burn together, and no one shall quench them.
Yeah.
Harsh
yeah.
descriptions here, but I like it. It's good metaphors.
You can set a tree on fire. You can set a garden on fire. Can you set God on fire? Can you get rid of God? Can you destroy God? No, you can't.
Yeah. And I like the comparison to tinder there, because what is tinder, right? It's like thin wood chips that you're going to use to start a fire, and they're usually dried. I mean, they light up at a spark.
Yeah.
I think the idea here is that these ideas, right, not only can you burn them, not only is it possible to burn them, it's like the easiest thing in the world to burn them, right? Both will burn together.
What is the tinder?
Right, the tinder the tinder here are going to be the strong, which I assume is talking about, right? These outside forces, these the prideful, the pagans, right?
Yeah.
And the work of it as a spark,
which
is interesting, right? Because what is it that causes the fire? It's the spark. What is it that causes them to burn? It's the work that they're doing. And we've already talked about what that is, right? This is why it's so easy to burn these ideas for God, right? Is because these things are bad things.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not like
it's self-destruction.
Yeah, it's not like I'm sitting here lighting wet wood. You know, I'm not going to have to do much to get it to look like, you know, I don't have to do much to show you that these are things that you shouldn't be doing, right? They light up like paper.
Yeah.
So maybe that's reading too much into it.
Take Samson, for example. He had strength to tear down this building, but the actual act of tearing down the building was going to kill him.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe is a good illustration of the comparison between the strength, but actually the accomplishment of what it's doing. And of course, in that was God ordained what he was doing. But I think the point is still true. I mean, the strength itself, the ability itself, the power itself to do something is not going to do anything. It's having the ability to do it is just the potential of destruction. Yeah. That's it. It's the actual doing of it that's going to engulf it in flames, right? Yeah. So I think that is maybe a good reference would be in like James 1, where we're talking about how things begin with a temptation.
Yeah.
That's just the potential. It's not the actual doing of the sin, but it's the potential of the sin. But then it's actually the sin itself that's going to be the destructive force on the individual, and it's going to be kind of the damaging aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death, right? So you've got the potential of the sin and the temptation, and then which is it's God's not doing that, you know, and we need to be careful theologically. God's not the one that's doing that. We're doing that as individuals. So we're being drawn away. Okay, let's contrast that with the drawing of God. God is drawing by his behavior and his actions, but then also we allow ourselves to be drawn away.
Yeah.
And you have the potential of doing something, the ability, the strength, the power to do something wrong. And then we allowing that to manifest itself in a work or an action. And that's what's going to cause the spark of destruction. And that is not only what Judah has done,
Yeah,
but it's also what we do if we don't keep our temptations and our behavior in check.
for sure.
And so you get angry at yourself, you get upset with yourself, and you say, man, like Paul in Romans 7, yeah, but I keep messing up, and I keep doing the wrong thing, and I keep not doing the thing that I want to be doing, and not doing the thing that I want to be doing.
I'm experiencing that right now. I have developed some terrible habits in this quarantine.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me. Time management. I'm not talking about like, I don't like, murder children or anything, but like, I'm
Why
like,
do you have to go there?
I know I took that to this furthest logical end. No, I just mean like,
yeah, by the way, the illustration is spitting on shoes, not murdering puppies.
Right. Oh, is that what it was?
Yes.
Oh man, I took it.
How did you remember that?
When I explained it in class, I've murdered the puppy, man. That's what I went with. I thought it was murdering puppies. That seemed like a harder thing to do. What was his expression was to get down and do what?
Lick his shoes.
I would do that over murder a puppy. I'm just saying. If you offered me enough money, I'd lick your shoes. But I don't think there's much you could get me to do to actually murder a puppy. It's a hard thing for a man to do. But listen.
What if the puppy pees in your car in your back seat all the time?
I'd throw him out, but I don't know that I could murder him.
Okay.
I don't think that I could take an active hand in his death because it's just they're too sweet. Listen, my thing is that I've developed these terrible habits in this quarantine, and this is just end of Podclass banter, but I've developed these habits of terrible eating, I don't drink enough water. I drink mostly pop now.
And I don't think I drank water yesterday at all.
My side has been hurting. I don't know if anyone has seen me on the screen. I've been doing this the entire time. Because if I lean a certain way, my side is absolutely killing me.
Cramp?
Yeah, it's like a cramp, and it's from it happens to me when I drink a lot of pop and eat a lot of sugary foods and stuff, because it's just like dude. I'm not getting hydrated enough,
Is that your kidney?
Yeah, it's probably my kidney. I'm not gonna lie to you here. It's not my appendix. Your appendix is more up here. It's definitely probably my kidney. It's been hurting me real bad. And my time management is terrible. The amount of work I've been getting done. I haven't mowed my yard in 2 weeks. I mean, I'm just getting in some terrible, terrible habits.
You need me to come by and mow your yard?
Yeah, if you do that for me, you'd be enabling me in every possible way. But yeah, I'd appreciate it.
Tough love.
Yeah.
Mow your own yard.
The best thing you can do for me is just to not. But I was thinking that very thing yesterday. I was thinking about that verse yesterday. Is the thing that I want to do, I don't do, because I sit and wallow all day long about why can't I fix this, right? The thing I want to do, I don't do, and the thing that I do, I don't want to do. And it pervades every aspect of your life. So.
Well, you need to drive out to your folks' house and run a mile.
I could run a mile out here. There was gunshots in my neighborhood last night, though, so I'm probably not going to do that.
Don't run a mile there.
Yeah,
that's why I said go out to your folks' house.
Well, that's a 45-minute drive to go run a mile, You
need to get out of the house. I'm listening to you, and I'm prescribing.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
get out of the house.
Well, anyway, off camera, I'll tell you how long I've been wearing this shirt. So, all right. Well, I think we covered Isaiah 1 fairly well, don't you think? I only took 3 notes, and it was a summary of every section we covered. But it was that Judah was corrupt in all ways. God planned to. This is important. God planned to restore, not to destroy. And wickedness is self-destructive. And those are just the key points I took. There was so much more that we said, but I didn't want to sit and be writing every time.
Yeah, because we didn't even talk about redemption in verse 27, which is a huge theme.
Yeah. But we're going to be covering that.
Yeah.
That's not the last time we see that idea.
Yeah. So maybe we'll make a reference to verse 27 in future
videos.
Chapters.
Anyway, this has been the Podclass for tonight. That's what we're calling it, Podclass. I dig that. If you've made it this far, sorry for all my oversharing of my personal details. And we will.
No dogs were harmed in the making of this
no puppies were murdered in the making of this podcast. We will talk with you later, and thanks for stopping by.
See ya.